Ghost towns and Route 66, well, they just go together. Kind of like chocolate and peanut butter, maybe? I don't know. But if you like ghost towns, and that's something that interests you, and you'd like to know about a few of them you can see just off of Route 66, well, come along with us. We're getting ready to go beyond the exit. Now, today we're talking about ghost towns, and I gotta say, I've got a special place for ghost towns. Some people don't care for them, but, there's something kind of unique about the abandoned places off the side of the road. We used to drive by them and wonder what they were, especially in the West. Out West, it seems like they're better preserved. There's a lot more spaces in between, and it seems like fewer people bother them. I mean, surely you've taken a chance and looked off the side of the road and said, I wonder what that is, or wonder what happened over there. Well, we've got a lineup that I've got started here, and I've got my list in front of me, so I just want to make sure I don't miss anything while we're talking about it. Route 66 has almost 18 fully documented ghost towns, so I tried to go through and look at about 6 of them that few of them you've probably heard of, and a few of them you probably haven't. Anyway, I see them as more than just derelict towns or fading away and crumbling buildings. They're kind of like a time machine. They're kind of like frozen in time. A lot of them were abandoned over time, so you have buildings that were left longer than others, and they're in varying states of decay. And that's kind of what it was, mid-century decaying Americana. The ones we're talking about today are fairly easy to get to. First up is Glenrio, a town that really is kind of differentiated because it sits on the Texas-New Mexico line. It's up in the Panhandle, and it's almost equidistant between Amarillo, Texas, and Tucumcari, New Mexico. 2 towns are kind of an oasis in a wide, broad, open area. Nothing. It never got larger than 30 people, but the surrounding areas kind of supported it. The railroad built the town, and they named it too. And Glenrio is kind of a strange name for this place. It means like valley, and kind of a Scottish term. And of course, it's the Spanish word rio, which means river. And when you look around for the river valley here, it's kind of hard to see. In fact, if anything, it should have been called Dusty Plains, but I guess that didn't quite sell as well on the brochure when they were trying to get people here. It was a livestock location. There were ranchers all around, and the ranchers used to bring in their livestock to get them on the train. Once things started springing up, that's when it really kind of got its duality. It used that state line because the laws were different in each of the states, even in different counties. Like on the Texas side, there wasn't any tax on gas, so they built the gas stations on the Texas side. Everybody went over there, got their gas. Now, the Texas county was dry, which, if you don't know what that means, they didn't allow the sale of alcoholic beverages. On the other side, it was wet, which is what you called a place that you could sell alcoholic beverages. So all the liquor joints and the bars were on the New Mexico side. Glenrio kind of differentiated itself when Route 66 came through, and the fact that post-war boom, it decided that it was going to go 24 hours a day. Now, this move was because most of the little towns would roll up their sidewalks at night, and then everyone would have a hard time finding where to get gas or food or whatever. You see, cars at this time, they just didn't have the air conditioning. It wasn't a thing that you found in a car. And this was a hot area. I mean, we're talking over 100 degrees during the summer. And it would cool off at night. So most drivers decided, hey, we'll just sleep during the day and drive at night. When Glenrio decided to go 24 hours a day, it was a busy little place for a while. As the nighttime travelers came through, they said that it was up to 4 and 5 deep in the gas pumps at the stations, which is crazy for such a small town. This motel sign was kind of cool. The motel and restaurant were located just inside the Texas border. So as you were coming in eastbound, you saw First Motel in Texas. But if you were heading the other direction, you were headed westbound, you saw Last Motel in Texas. I mean, technically they weren't wrong. Now, the town didn't really get killed alone by the interstate. It was also bypassed by itself. There was a segment of Route 66 that was built around it and to the north side. And some of the townspeople went out and built gas stations on this end, 2 of them in particular, to try to capture some of that lost business. But after that happened, the damage was pretty much done. When did it dry up? Well, that happened pretty much in the 80s. There were a couple of residents there for several years, but as of early 2000s, It was a complete ghost town. When you look at Glenrio today, there's no one there. There is a business there, and ironically, it's a cannabis shop on the New Mexico side where it's legal, because it's not legal in Texas. Interesting fact about this place, if you ever wanted a section of dirt Route 66 to take, it's not original. In fact, it was torn up in the 80s. They had asphalt leading from here all the way to the town of San Juan, where you can pick back up on the interstate there. The asphalt, the county on that side said was too expensive to maintain, so they ripped it all up. And you can drive this section to get a feel of what it may have been like back in the day to drive just dirt and gravel Route 66. All right, moving on to our next ghost town. This one is really hard to miss, and we drove by it 2 times before we ever stopped there. I-40 goes right through the middle of what this town was. In fact, that's why this town died. Not that it wasn't already on the decline, but man, they went right through the town, claimed eminent domain, and picked up and just bulldozed right on through. Cuervo, New Mexico. It's just about 25 miles west of Tucumcari, New Mexico, which is a great place to stop. If you want to see neat neon signs, the Blue Swallow is there, and several cool motels you can still stay at, and they're awesome. Now, Cuervo began in the early 1900s. It was another stop on the railroad, and it was a ranching settlement, just kind of like Glenrio. It's really not that far away, probably about 100 miles. One of its main iconic spots, or landmarks, I guess you'd say, is a Catholic church. And that Catholic church is still standing today. Of course, they had schoolhouses and businesses and groceries and stuff like that. The town, at the height of its population, was about 300 residents, which is not a whole lot, but it's about 10 times what we had over in Glenrio. I won't say it was an economic powerhouse. It never got real big either. It did have a cafe or two and a gas station. In fact, a gas station still exists on the north side of the interstate. Its frontage roads on both sides, and you can access it through a little bit of an overpass. Man, I've got some pictures of the overpass too. Its boomtown was really pretty much during the Route 66 era, what we call between the 40s and early 60s, before the interstate started its construction. The reason that we bring it up is because it's so accessible. I mean, you can just get off on the Quervo exit and look at both sides of this. Now, I'm going to give a little word of caution, but I'm not going to go much into the details on it because a lot of YouTube videos are out there on Cuervo, New Mexico, and some of the things that happened 10, 15 years ago, I don't think Cuervo is a place you visit at dark. First of all, there's no electricity up in there, and secondly, the buildings are really close together, and they're tight. There's a lot of blind corners and blind spots, so you can let your imagination do the rest of the walking. There are a few residents still here, but very few. The Catholic Church is still there. There's a cemetery as well that you can check out. Cuervo is famous just because of its location and what happened there. Lots of towns got bypassed by the interstate. I mean, this one got mowed over. Our next town, that's going to be number 3, Texola, Oklahoma. Just inside the Oklahoma border from Texas is a farming community that grew up in the 1900s and later benefited from the fact that Route 66 went through it. This town's really known for 3 major things, and one of those is the fact that it's got a really cool jail. Out here in this field, there's this old provincial jail that's still standing. It's limestone block, and it's not very big, but you can walk up to it and look inside of it. It's kind of neat. It's still standing out here all by itself. But Texola's got something else that's kind of interesting. There's a very short section of 4-lane highway that runs right into the town. Now, the next town over is Eerie, Oklahoma. It's right on the borderline of being a ghost town. It's got a Love's truck stop, and it's got a couple of other things. But from Eerie back over to Texola, it's 4-lane. Route 66 was done that way because Oklahoma kind of wanted to direct how the road came into the state. They wanted to direct I-40 as it was being built. Problem was that they built this segment of road, as a cedar kind of thing, trying to hope that something was going to grow, and it didn't. In fact, the engineers with I-40 came through and said, that doesn't meet standard. It's not limited access. We got roads coming off of it. Boom, they built an overpass that just completely bypassed the town. There is an exit, but you can see right here next to the Texas side, there's not much going on. If you stop by Texola, I think it's neat just to drive this 4-lane section because it's real easy to get to. You dive off at the truck stop over in Eric, and then you take off driving down this 4-lane section. You could probably, and I don't advise it, but you could probably do stinking donuts in the middle of this road and no one would even notice because it's so quiet. There's a restaurant located in an old Magnolia gas station. Now, those were kind of like the Phillips 66. They had the little house, and this one was a little bigger. It looked like this. What was Texola's peak? Well, it had 581 residents at one time. Now, it's pretty much more like 10. Okay, I'm kind of excited about this one. This one has always perplexed me, and I thought it was kind of neat, and I always wondered why it happened this way. It almost felt like the road engineers had a grudge. You know, if you could have a grudge against the town, this was one that looked that way, although I'm not sure it folded out like that. Arlington, Missouri, number 4 on our list. Arlington was actually a pretty hopping place. It was a resort town. It's right on the edge of the Gasconade River, a beautiful river that runs through central Missouri Ozarks. If you've ever been there, it's really good for fishing. People used to swim. In fact, you can still go to the town across from Arlington. Its big attraction, though, was just across the river over on the Jerome side, a place called the Stonydale Resort. It was known for its 100-foot pool. It was a natural spring-fed pool, cold as ice in the summertime, and people would pretty much go there to cool off. There's lots to do. There was fishing, and later in the year there was hunting as well, but you could definitely spend a lot of time soaking in that natural spring-fed pool. What else was there? Well, it was famous as a dance hall, and it had tennis, and there were even celebrities that swore by this place. Mae West, the famous 20s and 30s starlet, she used to go there regularly and talk about it. In fact, this whole stretch of road going all the way back was really famous. It was Route 66 for the longest time, pretty much up until the 40s. It kind of saw its peak before World War II. And once World War II occurred, everything started to kind of slow down after that. Now, Arlington, though, received the ultimate bypass, and this is why I put it on the list. It used to be a thoroughfare, and even when they bypassed it the first time, they ran a 4-lane section of Route 66. It stayed pretty close, even though it kind of trekked through the town in a different direction. But once the interstate was built, this town ended up on like a 3.5-mile dead end. They took out the bridge that was there that crossed the creek to get them to the other side. Not only that, when they built the bridge, the engineers for the interstate on I-44 decided instead of giving them an off-ramp there, they would just go ahead and pass right over the town. You can see this overpass in the pictures. It's crazy. I don't even know how would you feel about staring at that thing all the time, knowing that, hey, we're leaving you behind. Now, we stopped here back at the beginning of our Route 66 treks back in like 2013 and 14 to check it out, just because it was intriguing for another reason. Back up toward the interstate, there's a place that's kind of infamous, known as John's Modern Cabins. It's got a little more notoriety. Famous rowdy place right on the edge of the county line. Why they called it Modern Cabins, I have no idea. None of these little cabins had a bathroom. In fact, they didn't have any indoor plumbing whatsoever. There was an outhouse. It's a great place to stop off. That's why we stopped there originally. And we thought, hey, this might be a good place to go bike ride. We like to break the mountain bikes out and ride some of this old derelict road. This one even was designated as one of the spots where people believed that curbed highways were a safer thing. That was something for a while. They thought it would keep the cars on the highway. The problem was people would hit that at speed, and sometimes it turned those old cars over. As you make the big sweeping turn down in here, we found this overpass that goes way over, and this isolated town down in here, a little ghost town. We had no idea the history on it, but we looked it up pretty quickly. Stonydale no longer exists either. You can access Jerome, which is a neat place to visit, but be very careful. There's not a good way to access this, and the road is right on the edge of the property. There's no real good place to park and walk down here to it. Why should you visit it? I mean, how many towns are left on the end of a dead-end stretch like this? You know, and isolated with this much fervor. This next one's barely existing anymore, but it's there. And that was another thing we wanted to do with these ghost towns. We wanted to give you something you could still go see, that it wasn't just a little pile of rubble somewhere. At least in these, you're going to pull over and see something. There are structures or enough of the town foundation there that you can still get an idea of where it was. Jericho, Texas, or Jericho Gap as it's called, there's not much left, and you have to look hard to really see where the town was, but it was a town with an infamous reputation. There's extremes when it comes to the dirt in this area. If you're looking at this, it's here in the middle of a bunch of electric generating windmills now. These weren't here the first time we went to visit, but we'd heard about Jericho Gap and pulled off the road to find it when we were exploring Oklahoma and Texas. We biked this area too. The dirt kind of stays in 3 different states. It's hard packed like concrete, or it's complete dust. Any little bit of wind just blows it everywhere. Or when it rains, it is what they call Texas gumbo, which is slicker than snot. You cannot get traction on this stuff. If you try to get out of it, it just digs you deeper in the ground. And I had a couple of different things. It had a restaurant, it had a motel, it even had a service station at one time. What it definitely had was a low spot where Route 66 came through. It was dirt, Route 66. And this dirt section in a rain became totally impassable, especially in these newfangled automobiles. Even predating Route 66, the road that went through here was just plain awful. It definitely was not uncommon for farmers locally here to grab their mules or team up some horses, go down there and pull out that automobile. It's funny because they used to charge a lot of money to pull tourists out of the mud. Later on, it was also kind of rumored that water would suddenly appear during dry seasons on the road and people would get stuck and have to be pulled out. I guess you got to pay the bills. But it became famous for this. And when Route 66 was rerouted north of here, people really didn't miss it a whole lot. The town dried up and faded away. And this all happened well before the interstate, so we can't blame Interstate 40 for what happened here. Jericho at its height only had about 100 people. Okay, now why should you check out Jericho Gap? Well, I'll tell you why. We used to stop here every year just because it was fun to traipse through. There was never anyone there, and you could spend all the time you wanted to without being bothered. But they're doing a historic rebuild on Jericho as best possible, and they've gotten some grant money for it. So keep stopping in. You can check out their Facebook page. I'll put a link to it. I actually think it's some of the family that was there, but they've been doing a ton of work cleaning up the place. It was just derelict. Coolest thing is there's this old car. If I remember correctly, it's a Dodge that is sitting there just rusting away. You know, ghost towns are another thing that, and maybe I'll just talk about this on the aside, it's a good way to slow down and take a look at things. When you get there, it's all about exploring. Some of it's kind of like a scavenger hunt. Now, you need to make sure if you walk up on it and it says posted, no trespassing. I'm not saying that you should go in. If it says no trespassing, you should honor that. A lot of them don't have that posted anywhere. They're just abandoned places. Number 6, and our final one, Amboy, California. Man, this place was crazy famous. Just mainly for one place, and I hear grief about this. There's a little bit of an argument that goes on with Amboy. It was okay. Let me show you where it was. It's out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, Southern California. You come into the state, you're past Needles and all that, and you're driving out. And this is where Route 66 takes what's called Essex Road. A lot of it is off limits right now. In fact, I think you have to come down through Ludlow, if I remember correctly, to get to this. But it's a pretty good little trek, about 15, 20 miles to get down to it. And it was an oasis of sorts. There wasn't much stuff out here. This is where you see the straight desert roads that run on for miles and miles. Anyway, Amboy was known mainly for Roy's gas station. Here's some older pictures of it. You've probably seen this sign before. Either way, Roy's is famous, and it looks like something that was frozen in time. Strange thing was, Roy, he was pretty infamous himself. If he didn't like you, he'd run you off. He wouldn't let you buy gas, and you were kind of at his mercy. If you came in and you were low on gas, he'd pretty much charge whatever he wanted. He was known for not posting gas prices out. The people that lived in the area, and I want to be fair to them, also said that there were other things there besides Roy's. There was a school there. In fact, there was a indigenous school located in that town that we've got comments about. The post office is still there. Later on, the town was defunct. In fact, most of it was owned or leased by Roy's daughter. A little bit later in the early 2000s, she offered it up for sale. A fellow by the name of Albert Okura, who owned the Juan Pollo chicken restaurants in California, mostly around the LA basin, and right off of Route 66, a lot of them, had already redone the original site of McDonald's, where the McDonald's brothers started their restaurant in San Bernardino, and turned it into a little museum. He's definitely a preservation-minded fellow. Bought Roy's and promised to the widow there that he would refurbish it. And he spent nearly $500,000 on it, bringing it back up to where tourists could come in and check it out. Now, the restaurant is kind of famous that was there. In fact, Anthony Hopkins and Harrison Ford had autographed photos that they'd left inside the restaurant. Harrison Ford used to fly out to this restaurant, park at the local airfield, and walk over for lunch. The town kind of had gone into decline until Mr. Okura took it over and refurbished it. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but there's a group that's there that's keeping up the place and kind of trying to help Amboy stay on its feet for visitors. I'd love to hear some updates about Amboy because it was 2019 the last time we were through there at all. And that's our list of ghost towns, all 6 of them. These are easy to access pretty much, really close to the interstate. Ones that you can go and just check out. In fact, if you'll check out the description, I'm going to leave a ton of stuff there. Also, if you'd like to help us out, we'd appreciate it. We have several books about Route 66 that are linked in the description. Now, we're an affiliate marketer for Amazon, so when you purchase those, we get a small commission on that, and that helps us keep the channel going. Biggest one that I recommend above all, though, is the Easy Guide Route 66 by Jerry McClanahan. If you're going to take Route 66 and you had to take one book with you, that's the one book. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about these ghost towns, and maybe if you're seeing something off the side of the road next time and you're not sure what it is, whether it's Route 66 or some other highway, you might take the chance to just veer off and do a little bit of exploring. You never know what you're going to find. We love having you on the channel. We're glad you watched our video. Please leave us a comment, a like, and if you like what you're seeing, we do a lot of this. We talk about deep dives into the history of roads and towns and the people behind them. And if that's the kind of thing you like, hey, join us. Subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you. We've got lots more coming up. In fact, a big video that we're working on right now about the origins, the birth of the Dixie Highway. As always, we really appreciate you being here. And I want to say thanks for watching, and God bless.